Through, John.
Oh, I'm good. Okay, I'm not. I wasn't talking. So.
Are you ready?
Right.
Cool. Are we going? Okay. Hey, welcome. All right. It's a great week. This is the Genesee County Compassion Club show. I'm your host, Jeremy. Glad to be back here in the studio, allpointstv.com. John's obviously here in the studio. You can hear him behind the camera there, making it happen. Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
All right, we made it out in the snow today to bring you a nice, fresh, warm podcast. Going to give you all the latest news from across the country about cannabis, let you know what's been happening down at the Genesee County Compassion Club, and other good, fun, Christmas, fun-filled stuff this week as well. So thanks for joining me. I'm your host, Jeremy. I'm glad to be back here. Made it through the blizzard to get here today. So, everybody knows me, knows I love snow, so I'm not going to lie about that. I love the snow. I do. I love the fresh pow. I love the crispness in the air. I love how your nostrils stick together when it gets below 10 degrees because the moisture makes it freeze. All that good stuff. You know what I mean? Like when you take a breath and the air is so dense, it almost like makes your lungs seize for a second.
Yeah, there was a guy a few years ago at the U of M, this girl I worked with, it was her boyfriend, went out to clear his windshield off, and his lung collapsed.
Oh, wow.
Right, and he was a young guy in his the early 20s.
Just seized up on him.
Just seized right up, and they had to take him to the hospital. He damn near died,
Wow.
I mean, so
I don't want to see that to happen to anybody, John. I'm talking about the good stuff here.
That's the thing is that winter doesn't have good stuff, in my opinion.
I know. You live in Michigan, you should get used to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Learn to embrace it.
The only reason why I don't move to Florida is because it looks like one beach. There's no green thing to me, except for maybe on the Gulf side, but I didn't see it, so I guess it exists. But otherwise, I'd be in Florida.
They got mosquitoes there that will carry you away.
Yeah,
right?
I know. That's the reason why I don't go. That's another reason.
And where they carry you to is a big pile of like reptiles. You know what I'm saying? It's a feast fest for humans. All right. Hey, welcome. Let's get going here with the show. We got some announcements coming up here for the Genesee County Compassion Club. Let you guys know we do have the soup kitchen this month. Obviously, around the holiday time, it's always time to think about how good you've got it. And an opportunity this is for you to give back. So if you could sign up for the soup kitchen if you have time. Serving down there the fourth Friday of the month, and we could use your volunteer effort. Appreciate that. Another thing that we got going on right now, if you have a heart for those furry little friends we have, our pets, those of you that know us, the Genesee County Compassion Club has been strong supporters of the Genesee County Humane Society. We love our little furry friends, and we're doing our Pets Paws for Cause this year. We've loaded up the Christmas tree with all kinds of different dog items, cat items, pet items. We don't want to just single out dogs and cats. But if you have anything laying around the house, or maybe you want to stop by Magoo's or Doogie's or one of your favorite pet stores in the areas and pick up something, you can bring it down and hang it on our tree, and we'll be donating that to the Genesee County Humane Society. It'll be going to one of your favorite furry friends down there to help them have a happy
Nothing for iguanas, though. So you're selecting just only furry mammalians. See, you're you're being bigoted.
You're saying that animals might want to celebrate Hanukkah?
No, like iguanas. I mean, you got to get stuff for iguanas. No, not Hanukkah. No, iguanas.
Like animals can celebrate whatever holiday they want. All right, I'm not going to argue with them about that.
Ectotherms to the power. Power to the ectotherms. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can bring in the sawdust shavings if you want to help support hamsters or whatever it is you got. That's all good. The Humane Society needs all that stuff. So. But you get the point, and we definitely appreciate your support, and anything that you can do to help out is going to greatly help out the Humane Society. So we'd appreciate that. All right? Man, it's a beautiful time. It is the holidays. It's time to be spending time with your family and friends, and I hope that you get the opportunity to do that this holiday season. Sometimes you can take that all for granted, and then all of a sudden it's gone, and you realize that you should have had more time with your family and maybe less time doing all the other stuff in your life. So before we get going with all the other boring, important stuff that we have to share on the show, I want to make sure I mention that before you tune out, so that maybe, just maybe, you would take an extra minute in your life to spend it with those that you love. So do that today, all right? All right, let's get on here with the show. We got some stuff from around the country. Marijuana is a happening thing. If you have been in the dark, it's time to come out of the closet and see the light, because it is mainstream, it is in your face, and it is time to realize that all of the things that we've been told for 75 years are pretty much BS. The campaign for prohibition, the whole war on drugs, it's a farce. and it's time that people woke up. We've got professional athletes now stepping up to the plate saying, hey, yeah, you know, I'd rather use cannabis than use all the other crap that the doctor might prescribe for my pain, for my muscles, for everything else. We're breaking the mold. We're shattering the stigmas. You know, we've got, upper class, white collar business people saying, hey, yeah, I use cannabis all the time instead of those other brainwashing things that help me, you know, stay in my chair and keep focused. I don't want those types of things from the pharmaceuticals. I want cannabis. It helps me do it better, and it helps me live a healthier life because of it. So this is not going to stop. It's going to continue flowing because really the truth is in the product. And that's a beautiful thing. That's what I love about cannabis, is that you can take everything that everybody says about it, throw it all out the window, try it for yourself, and find out that, holy crap, this stuff is really not half of what they've been saying, and it is a whole heck of a lot more of what some of these funny smelling people have been telling me. You know what I mean? Maybe I should listen to them more often. So, all right, but going across the country mainstream is no joke, and as of, I believe it's tonight, midnight, in Massachusetts, you can fire one up no matter what, as long as you're an adult. It's open for business, for recreational use. I looked up some of the rules here because I was thinking, man, I've never been to Massachusetts. Maybe it's a good time to go. I want to make sure I'm compliant when I'm there, so I got to know what I got to have. All right. If you're in Massachusetts and you're 21 years of age or older, it is now legal to possess 6 plants per person and up to 12 plants per household. So you can grow it yourself. It's a beautiful thing. Again, this is for recreational purpose, not just for medical. They've had medical marijuana in Massachusetts for quite some time. You can grow it yourself. You can provide it for yourself. You can possess it. And then they are going to be licensing retail stores. Here's the catch. Retail stores will not be allowed to have a chance to open until January of 2018. So they've got a whole another year to go before they get all the regulations in place, before they start licensing, and before they start allowing businesses to open. So you may have a bit of a conundrum here going on in Massachusetts, because you've got an entire year where it's legal for people to have it, but nowhere legal for them to go buy it at. So that's kind of a weird thing. Another thing on top of that, it's legal for people to produce it, obviously, if they're allowed to have plants in their home. However, there's no place for them to take their excess. So they've produced what they want for themselves, for their friends or family, whatever. They've got extra. What do they do with it? There's no outlet for them to utilize. And it's not going to be happening until January 2018. So the critics of the law are saying, hey, look, this is a big problem. It's going to allow for increased black market activity, talking out-of-state smuggling and so forth. Obviously, things that we don't want to have associated to our new legal budding industry here. But unfortunately, it's going to happen. The experts know this. And I guess in knowing that, maybe they should have wrote their law a little different. I don't know. But that's what it is. That's what's happening in Massachusetts. So I guess it's a good time to go to Boston, right? Tie one on. Maybe we should be planning a St. Patty's Day trip. It'll be St. Patty's green rainbow like never before now. Their green beer will be a whole new kind of green. You know what I'm saying? All right, moving on here out of Massachusetts, going down south to our buddies down in Tennessee. Tennessee does not have medical marijuana. It's one of the now states in the minority who do not offer this to their citizenship. So at any rate, they're working on it, right? So Tennessee is looking at possibly introducing, they just introduced actually recently, new legislation for medical marijuana. It is very limited, all right? They do have a decent scope of qualifying conditions. I think it needs to be expanded on, but it is at least a starting point for the folks in Tennessee. They are looking at licensing up to 50 different grow operations throughout the state. These would be state licensed, state approved facilities. And they are looking at specifically placing at least 15 of those facilities in distressed areas, obviously hoping that they would be some sort of an economic booster and creating economic business activity for the area as well. So that's what Tennessee's looking at doing. Tennessee's a pretty good sized state. Obviously, Michigan's bigger than Tennessee, but there's a lot of folks in Tennessee. I don't know if 50 grow operations is really going to be enough to provide for all the need in the area. But that's what Tennessee's looking at doing. If you live in Tennessee, maybe got friends or family in Tennessee, you could let them know that now's the time to contact their state legislators and offer some support. Let them know, hey, look, we'd like to have access to this medication. Been talking to our relatives in states that already have it. It's a godsend, and it is unbelievable that we don't even have it here. Tennessee's always being accused of being one of those backwoods kind of states. Man, break the mold, all right? Here's your opportunity to do that and be a little bit progressive. Get in line, jump on the bandwagon, if you will. But at least it is time to start offering people in Tennessee an alternative to the pharmaceuticals and the other things that they've already had access to. All right, now we're going to move north. All right, we're done with Tennessee. We're going to move north up to Canada. All right, everybody knows, if you've been watching this podcast at all throughout the years, you know that Canada has medical marijuana. It's called Health Canada is the name of the program up there. It's government run. They are state, government approved facilities that provide the cannabis to the patients up there. Of course, the actual companies are private companies, so it's big business up in Canada. If you're a patient in Canada, you get your medication most likely through the mail, sent to you through an order form or online form, whatever it is. Maybe you do a phone call, consultation, whatever it is. You're getting your medication sent to you by a corporation through the mail, coming prepackaged form, and you don't get a lot of choice. I mean, it's basically just bud. It's not like you get to have an opportunity to have extracts. There's no edibles or anything like that being done, so it's very limited. But at any rate, they are obviously hoping for more in Canada. The program has been expanded in the last few years slightly. They've relaxed just a little bit, letting more people actually get qualified through their doctors, but it's still very restrictive. And, since Justin Trudeau, the new prime minister, was elected, they have been talking a lot about his progressive policies. He himself has been speaking openly about legalizing cannabis for recreational purposes, and so we're starting to see the framework of what things might look like. This is some of the information I've picked up so far. Some of the stuff that's been introduced through their House or Parliament, whatever it is you want to call the Canadian government. Right now they're looking at possibly introducing something that says, hey, look, you can have 4 plants for yourself, no taller than 1 meter. It's really interesting when you start looking at these government proposals, regulations, laws, whatever. The stuff that they come up with in regards to the cultivation and the processing of cannabis. A lot of times it's created and thought up by people who are not necessarily in the business. They aren't really hands-on growers or caregivers. They're more the bureaucratic attorney type people that just don't have that grow room green thumb experience. So you see these goofy types of laws being written. This one, in this case, 4 plants up to a person per person, and the plants cannot be more than 1 meter tall. For all of us, those here in the U.S., it's about 3.3 feet. So just shy of 3.5 feet is how tall a meter is. So you can imagine some of the confusion that this would cause. What happens if your plant happens to get a little too tall? For those of us that do grow, most of us understand that a 1 meter tall plant is pretty doggone short. Things can be done to manipulate that and to make the plant stay underneath the 1 meter limit, if you will, by forcing it down. But so things can be manipulated and certainly will be. If you're not only going to allow people to grow 4 plants, you're probably going to have one plant that might fill up a room this entire size, and the whole thing's going to be less than 1 meter because you just keep taking the branches and bending them down farther and farther. I mean, this isn't a complicated thing for those of us that know how to grow. But obviously the folks in Canada and their government, they need a little bit more input from the people in the industry, if you will, in my opinion. And that's what they're looking at right now. So I guess if this does happen, if Canada does pass this the way that this is written, they're going to be looking for some indicas. That's my guess. All right, there's not going to be any sativas in Canada. I'm just joking, obviously. All right, moving now across from out of Canada, we're going to move on down south to Florida. We're going to get warm for just a little bit here in the podcast. A lot of folks are keenly interested in what's going on in Florida. A lot of us got family down there. Maybe it's a vacation spot. Maybe that's where you're from, or maybe it's just your favorite place because you love Disney. Who knows? Florida has passed a couple years ago what they call non-euphoric types of cannabis. So, in other words, cannabis that doesn't get you high. We're talking about CBD only strains. A lot of folks are familiar with the Charlotte's Web. There's other strains out there that are just like that as well, where the THC level is basically nil, so there's no psychoactive effect, and really it's just a CBD type producing strain. So this is specifically for folks with things like Alzheimer's or muscle spasms. We're talking about MS. a whole slew of different things really that can be treated by this particular type of cannabis. Not to be said that they can't be treated by other types of cannabis as well that do include THC. But at any rate, that's what Florida did. They approved this legislation a couple years ago so you could have this. And it's kind of funny because obviously they did that with the purpose of slowly expanding their regulatory market to include other types of cannabis as well. And that's what we're seeing right now. So there have been there's a law that just passed here in Florida to expand their medical marijuana program. I think most folks heard about that. And this is kind of the interesting part. Now, Florida obviously has more people living in it than Michigan, but it also has an older demographic, if you will. There's a little bit more mature down there in Florida. They are saying that the market in Florida may contain up to potentially 250,000 patients that would qualify for medical marijuana under their newly expanded guidelines. So this is kind of interesting. And also in the newly expanded guidelines, they have now included other forms of cannabis. It's not just CBD type only products. Here's the catch though, folks, and I'm bringing this up because I've had a lot of people ask me about what's going on in Florida. You know, I'm ready to get out of here. Like John was saying, you know, I don't like the cold. If I'm going to be a caregiver, I want to, you know, have the opportunity to go do it somewhere where it's warm. Well, Florida might not be your best choice. Here's what's happening in Florida. So far, they have issued 6 licenses, just 6, to produce cannabis for the population of Florida. So obviously this is a very limited, very regulated scheme. It's not like you're going to just go down there and put up shop. This is something that's going to be very difficult. And Florida also has written into their legislation that once their patient numbers hit 250,000, then they will approve 3 more producers. So what we're looking at here is a highly regulated, very government controlled, if you will, market that is being established in Florida. And apparently, if you're only going to have 6 or even 9 licenses to provide for 250,000 potential clients, we're talking about some really fat cat type of deals here. So, word to the wise, Florida might not be the best place to look for medical marijuana as your next future business expansion. Maybe there's other ancillary things, but being a producer most likely clearly isn't a choice for the majority of us. So, at any rate, that's what's up with Florida. Me personally, I'm not a big fan of these highly controlled, regulated things. I think that when you do that, it only creates more gaps for a black market to exist. If people are having trouble getting access to what they want, or even if it's a price point that they don't care for, all of these things will drive your consumer away from your regulated market. And that's been proven time and time again. So it'll be interesting to see how this happens. Obviously, this is still in development in Florida. They just passed this law back here a month ago. So it's going to take time. But I think it's pretty interesting that they just passed the law a month ago and they've already issued out 6 licenses to these commercial producers. So kind of tells me that that stuff was already in the works before the law got passed. Maybe they had a good inclination that it was going to pass, and so they went and did this prior to it passing. But at any rate, obviously, if you're one of those 6 people, you were in the mix before that ever got passed. So at any rate, again, fat cat deals, I'm not a fan of them. I don't think they do much for the consumer. They certainly don't do much for the economy. And then we could do a lot better. So that's my opinion. All right, let's move on. We're moving in, covering one more area. Man, there's a lot of stuff happening across the world with cannabis, especially here in North America. But this over here is in California. Now, most of you know that California is also one of the states, I mentioned it on last week's podcast, that recently legalized cannabis for adult recreational use. Here's some of the details behind that. So again, if you're going to be traveling out of state, and most of us are medical patients, so we're concerned with the medical laws. But, if you're not qualified in that state, oftentimes the medical laws won't apply to you there, even if you would qualify, simply because you just haven't gone through the process. And California is a lot like that. But here's what you're looking at now outside of the medical area. This is for the recreational part of it. This is what you can do. 21 years and older, you can possess up to 28.5 grams, or basically ounces, grams. Not ounces. Basically, you can possess up to 1 ounce of flowers, okay, out in California. Just got to be 21 years of age or older. You can also possess on you up to 8 grams of extract or concentrate. So, that's basically what you can have. It's what you can carry around. I'm not going to get into the growing and stuff like that. You can check that out for yourself. I do believe that some of that has yet to be regulated, and I also have been told many of the areas in California are looking at self-regulation types of ordinances that would limit or prohibit altogether the production / consumption of cannabis in their public areas, in their commercial areas, so on and so forth. So we'll look to see some blowback from certain areas in California in regards to the adult recreational market. So what I mean by that is, you might see like right now in San Diego, they've already passed a moratorium saying, look, we're not opening any new pot shops until we know exactly what we want to do. So very similar to what we've seen here in Michigan in regards to our dispensaries for medical purposes. You have the clients, the businesses are ready to go. The market is there. There's properties, facilities ready to be used. So it's the market being ahead of the politicians, and the politicians are playing catch up. And some of them, they really want to have a tightly controlled handle basically on what's going to happen in their communities, which, certain degree that should be expected. What we need to do as a professional industry is present ourselves as professionals and set up shop in a professional manner, working with the townships, working with the cities, whoever it is that you have to work with, but doing so in a manner that's going to bring positivity to the area and not be this clash of power and, I know my rights and, well, this is my town. We don't want to have those kinds of situations going on. So hopefully they'll be able to stave off some of that activity. Like I said, it's already happening in certain areas and it's just bound to occur. But these are one of the growing pains that we have when we have new industry growth here in the United States. We've got the industries, scrambling to get out there and get their business, and we've got the government scrambling to get their hands on it. That's basically how it works. All right, I wanted to talk a little bit about CBD oil. I kind of mentioned the CBD type products earlier just a few minutes ago when we talked about Florida. There's a lot of places, a lot of companies, a lot of news outlets that have been misleading over the last year when it comes to CBD type products. In fact, some folks have even been led to believe that CBD only, so if you've got CBD only type products, that they're somehow federally legal. And I'm here to tell you that that is absolutely not the case. Marijuana is still Schedule 1. That includes all forms, all types, all resins, all products from the marijuana plant, not just THC. So we have to keep that in mind. CBD is still federally illegal. So if you've got, let's say for instance, a struggling child, maybe a minor, they need some Rick Simpson oil, and they live in, let's say, Oklahoma or some other state that doesn't have any medical marijuana law, just because it's CBD only and won't get anybody high does not mean that it is legal for you to take it there, to go across state lines with it, or anything else. The only protection you have is your Michigan medical marijuana law, and that's the only type of protection that you get. So it's important to remember that. The feds just recently attached a new memo onto their drug code policy, which specifically creates a new section for marijuana extracts. So the DEA, they are well aware of the different products that are out there, and they are on it. All right. So, on average, the DEA is not really looking for your mom and pop person who's producing for their sick kid. They're looking for like the big company that's like, hey, yeah, we're going to take over the world and sell CBD everywhere. So I imagine your average person doesn't have a whole heck of a lot to worry about with these departmental type, changes or in code or policy or statement, whatever it may be. But at any rate, it's important to remember what the laws actually state, where we're at, because even if you're not being affected by it, it still is evidence that we need to have things changed at the federal level. When we have a product like this that is not psychoactive, does not provide any high whatsoever, no matter how or how much is consumed, it has purely only a medicinal purpose. It absolutely should be available across the country to anybody who needs it through the use of recommendation of a doctor, and it should be done without question. I mean, when you have over-the-counter products that will put you dead in your tracks if you simply consume it incorrectly, and we know that, to have a product like this that is non-lethal and does only things that are good, it is preposterous to have it be listed on a Schedule 1 drug scheduling like it is. So even though I disagree with it, it is still important to follow the law as stated, and it's important to press to change the laws. That's what we've got to do. All right, some other interesting information I wanted to share with you. This is also in positive respect to cannabis use. A lot of people, a lot of folks that are deterrents to the advancement of cannabis, whether it be for medicinal or for recreational purposes, I always like to point the finger and say, hey, what about drugged driving? What about people that are driving around all high and causing accidents and killing people? How do we stop that? You say that it should be available for everyone. Well, then that's just that much more danger on the road, and we don't need that. Well, here's some interesting facts for you. If you look at Colorado, who's now had legal adult use for a couple of years, their actual drug-related fatalities have gone down. And in fact, they've been some of the lowest levels in decades, and this is after they've made marijuana legal. So if you look at the facts is that cannabis is not affecting people's driving ability. The laws are not affecting their abilities anyways. We have to look at this from a realistic standpoint and not just listen to the folks that make drug testing equipment. All right, they are there to sell a product. They are there to sell it by fear, 9 times out of 10. We have to approach this with common sense and look at the real facts behind this and see whether or not it's a necessity, because that type of talk is coming to Michigan. Believe it. All right. All right. One more thing I wanted to share with you. It's kind of interesting. Actually, a couple things. One of is in Colorado, I did want to mention this. The MJ sales, basically marijuana sales for 2016, which obviously isn't quite over yet, has already topped $1 billion. $1 billion. That's a big market. All right. And that's just for one state, for one type of product. So there's obviously opportunity here. All right, and this is the other thing I want to share with you. There's another report that just recently came out, and this studied high school kids, basically, and their ability to access cannabis. So what does it look like now, and what did it look like then? And this is another one of those myth busters, if you will, where we think that, well, because we're talking more about cannabis now, because it's more mainstream, that kids are going to be more likely to access it. And actually, that couldn't be farther from the truth. You see, regulation provides enforcement, it provides the necessary rules to keep things where they should be at. And it also provides the market to where the consumer who wants that product has a legal viability to access that market, rather than going through the back door. And then once you go through the back door, there's all kinds of things that are accessible. And that's what we don't want to have. And this is actually proof that proper regulation, not prohibition, is what helps people make the right educated choices. And it also helps funnel things where they should. So since 1975, it is actually the levels that children are able to access cannabis. So they went out and they interviewed, hundreds of kids from across the country at different age groups, mainly high school type kids, some junior high, and they said, how easy is it for you to just go get some weed? And not since 1975 have the levels been this low. So what we're finding is that the regulation, the opening of the markets, the legalization is actually providing a tighter control on the product, and it is limiting access to the folks that should not be accessing it. So it's working, basically. It is working. It's just like alcohol. Prohibition didn't work. We got rid of it. We instituted some progressive policies. We put through a whole lot of education. Got kids to understand what it is, how it works, and also provided a regulated, legalized market to keep the product where it should be at. And in doing so, it eliminated the black market of alcohol, pretty much. I mean, obviously you got these guys called moonshiners and so on, but 99% of the alcohol out there is legal alcohol. And we're able to keep it out of the kids' hands that shouldn't have it. Most kids would tell you it's easier to access drugs in general than it is to access alcohol. And now they're telling us that it's tougher to access cannabis as a part of what's illegal out there than it was previously. And that's because of regulation. It's because of the viable market that's been established to keep it where it's supposed to be, to keep it in the hands of who it should be in the hands of. And that's a good thing. I mean, I think that's proof that prohibition doesn't work. It's a brain dead type of policy. It should have never been instituted. And what we need to do is have programs that are built around education and advancement, so that we have children growing up looking to, instill something in their life of value and have something to look forward to. Not just be depressed and think, well, there's nothing left in life, so I guess I'll just get messed up. And unfortunately, that's a lot of where that comes from. So what we need to be doing is working on policies that work, not prohibitions. It's ridiculous. All right, so that's the news for this week from around the country. I want to share those items with you. It's kind of exciting to see everything that's happened in 2016. We knew it was going to be a big year for cannabis. We've got 9 states now across the nation that are now for adult recreational use. We've got 26 plus states across the nation for medical marijuana use. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in 2017. So stick with us here on the podcast. Keep tuned. Get down to the Genesee County Compassion Club. We got lots of fun stuff happening. Got some awesome new food items coming up. I saw them working on it today. It was smelling great. Had trouble leaving. But it's most importantly, it's a holidays. So like I said before, get out there, celebrate with your family, give them a hug, tell them you love them, and be thankful for what you have. So I hope you guys have had a wonderful year. I hope you have a Merry Christmas. And I hope to see you next year here on the Genesee County Compassion Club show. Thanks a lot. Thank you, John, for being with me this year, too. I appreciate everything you do here at All Points TV. Guys, check out their other podcasts. They got lots of good information here all about Flint, your state, and you get it from sources, the real sources, not some news flabber jabber. All right, guys. Thanks for being with me this week. I appreciate it. My name's Jeremy. You guys have a great week. Merry Christmas.